The purpose of this talk is to describe the system that George Bush put together with Brian Eno and Dick Sire at Carnegie Mellon University. It will shed light on the genocide in Gaza, the AIDS attack, what Lennon and Yoko Ono have really been up to, the story of Leslie Katz with respect to me, and Mackenzie Shirilla. The Clintons covered the whodunit of the name Donahue for Don, Ono, and Netanyahu on my father's obituary by masquerading a whodunit in what they called collective opinion. It was predicated on a falsehood concerning what they called a godsend, which was my deciphering of implications impinging on my experience, to use their terms. What the godsend was a letter to me to Leslie, which didn't scare her. She came to visit me. What it really showed was the indecent language necessary to expose how she behaved, which collective opinion censored in favor of doing a war dance by proclaiming it probable cause to investigate something they knew had never happened. Logic would tell you it never happened. She wasn't afraid of me. She dated me for a year and was still a virgin. How could they be investigating rape? If you think of the Jekyll Island Index, which is based on first names, like the fact that Ronnie and Casper attacked me as a child, who were named like Ronnie and Caspar Weinberger, Ronald Reagan, and as the axis of the wheel, and they're changing the wheel, you can see how innocent people get included. What's needed to change things away from the structure of their axis is public education, but for public education, you need media cooperation. As T.S. Eliot said, between the idea and the reality falls the shadow. Instead of what they did by cooperating with public education, they decided to move guerrilla theater into the street of a form of parochial, undeclared civil war. As you can see, the script that was actually written by Lennon, that came in the name Gail Burson, says only two people would know. In other words, this is a secret about double agency. Where equals there, where doubles there, you only live twice. Only two people would know. Now, by planting what they portray in their goblinage as barbs, meaning their gaslighting index, the rabid from Penis Gabriel's Real Worlds convey a hybrid system of counterclaim. In other words, Lennon's Houdini is the idea that the best defense is a good offense. And the way this works with Mackenzie Shirilla was by having their mad doctor named Mackenzie, and including such things as the Orientalist sound of Shirilla for Shaviti and Suras and Shilla Princess. So what they did was they impinged on the persona's experience a neurohypnotic chemical, which I proved in the evidence papers that showed that the neurohypnotic chemical that they used on me was how they were proclaiming probable cause for rape when they knew that virginity was not proof of rape. In other words, their war dance to cover up using this nerve agent and saying only two people would know the truth. While in fact, a lot of people know the truth, but they're not obliging their requirement to acknowledge the truth because they have a collective agreement, collective opinion that they're mongering. So the nature of the collective opinion is that they're a democracy, but the democracy doesn't work if people don't respond conscientiously to their freedoms, which leads to the question of, is authoritarianism more conscientious, or could authoritarianism be more conscientious? If you look at the dark and sinister habit of sabotage of cultural norms that went on exploiting my deafness, for example, at the community college, you begin to see that sabotage of democratic ethics is quite the rage. Now, how did we get Lenin's Houdini? Well, for one thing, how beguiling it was for Queen Elizabeth to consort with Pentagon Disney and imagine herself in Alice in Wonderland. So they have the trick of the tail, which was a Genesis album after the disappearance of the lead character. And they have a conference of the Godfathers. When Enemies Agree was illustrated on back in the USSR, the White Album, and they said that the separation of church and state was a sacrosanct opinion through the mouthpiece of Ronald Reagan, which he believed was a lie, that God was almighty and everybody who believed in theology was good, and people who believed the separation of church and state were fallen angels. And they said, lie back. They used Ryback to get Ryback by lying back. And you have Miles Kirshner lording over me, which is the Miles, is the Tanya who's real first name, the last name. And if you look at Milo Vangelis, he was a hard-boiled purge voice from the Soviet Empire. But if you look at also the fact that Brezhnev met with the star of the Rifleman, he was actually very excited. If you go to Tacoma Library College of UW, you see that Clinton's America is interfiled with Sergei Eisenstein. They're side by side on the shelf, which means, well, the Cold War people were building up their armies by playing traitor. If you looked at the other side of things, that was obedience training, when in reality, the Rifleman and Brezhnev were working together. And back in the USSR, in Alice in Wonderland's Godfather conference, when enemies agree. And you see the Rifleman in the shooting of King and Bobby Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. So what they mean by barbs is the gaslighting index. They're showing the Jekyll Island first name of things. And the guerrilla theater for parochial education that came out in the streets was the hoodwink of Two Virgins Pussy Ball. They got all the black pimps in the bars to hoot at the queer ball, whose father thought he was all big, because public education is obviously the way to compel media cooperation in a democracy of conscience. But they have these people like Stephen King and Jack Nicholson working guerrilla theater for parochial education by impinging on the persona's experience, gaslighting to get the tea kettle to go up. And because of the collective opinion that they had going, they needed an illustration that made more sense than Hillary's claim that virginity proved rape, because you weren't allowed to talk about the indecent language was required to describe Leslie Katz's actual behavior. So they have they come on with this honest Sabo Abe, honest Abe, Sado Abe. She was the Ripper killer of Japan. And when you look at the language system, you have blinking, right? Blinking, because they say life begins at conception. And they had a nerve agent to forge the claim that the queerbait was hiding a lie detector. Penis Gabriel mongoed about rapid eye movement, REM. See, blinking, REM. Life begins at conception. So they have George Will's soulcraft, statecraft is soulcraft. In other words, the fundamentalist totalitarianism of the leapfrog Zionists, Putin, Zelensky, Oliver Stone, Hitler, Reagan, um, Thorls, Prince King Thorls. This is the statecraft is soulcraft, and Blinken is part of this idea. The rapid amo, you're not holy if you don't believe that life begins at conception. And since virginity proves rape, abortion is a genocide. That one genocide is as good as another. It's almost like granting a license to do genocide. And Biden is a pragmatist. He says, better your genocide than our genocide. Now, so the leapfrog Zionists inform from Biden's rank and file. In Seattle today, they had Israeli museum thieves on the lookout. And another thing about Blinken is that it's like strobe light. Remember, Sean Straub went to the Dakota with Mark David Chapman. Now, Mark David Chapman was being martyred and said he should be given a death sentence for what he did, but that's not because he killed John Lennon. It's because he was a martyr of the AIDS attack group. John Lennon, they beamed up to Star Trek with George Takei. George, the transporter room was even referred to in Zappa's screen. So Blinken and Straub is the REM of Clockwork Pussyball that leads to the Comodome. It's a revenge attack by Hitler, Reagan, in the name of Yoko Ono, and the whole thing is a revenge attack for the Axis. And when you look at the history of Bly Sanders, Diaghilev, D.W. Griffith, D'Annunzio Mussolini, Luigi Ferretti, you see that the Cubists and Houdini era of Ouspensky and Gurdjieff's association with Hitler were the turnstile that they operated in when they moved to counterfeit reality and control our social narrative. You can see Free Nelson Mandela and Noah in cement writing in the Green Party district. In other words, they were using a theme of an arc. Liverpool was the seat of the Confederate Secret Service during the war between the states, but you're not going to have Lenin enslaving black people. He's going to liberate and include some black people. And after the genocide, there will be an arc. As you can see, there's a symbiosis between the horrifying picture that I've circulated that my sister found after I was tortured that confirms only a deranged counterfeiter like Robert Trevor King Crimson would allege anything else. And the terrible Mackenzie Shirilla nerve agent that was used for neurohypnotic purposes, as you can see from a writing I did when I was in that state at the age of 14 years old. And the letter from Will Zell surrounding my name and positive negative side is Blinken's genocide, REM, positive and negative conception, karma, Zionist punishment for sexual immorality is AIDS, and Blinken, REM Straub, it's leapfrog Zionism. We need to apprehend the perpetrators. Biden and Trumpy Tune work together on this abomination. They're using genocide as a discipline, saying that the means justify the ends. We have an obligation to protect children. Biden has waged genocide on an army of toddlers, and he expects America to sit still and tolerate our name being used as a Holocaust on toddlers. I have news for you, Joe Biden. It ain't going to go that way.